بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أهلا وسهلا بكم طلبة الفرقة الثالثة في المحاضرة الأولى من مادة الآثار المصرية القديمة لهذه السنة. درسنا في السنة اللي فاتت سنة تانية في الترم الأول والتاني درسنا آثار الدولة القديمة وبعض من آثار الدولة الوسطى. بدءا من السنة دي إن شاء الله هندرس على مدى الترمين هندرس آثار الدولة الحديثة. ويمكن أهم ومعظم آثار الدولة الحديثة هي موجودة في مدينة واحدة شهيرة، وهي مدينة الأقصر في صعيد مصر. Luxor city was a very important city through the ancient Egyptian history. Actually, that because it was the capital of Egypt during the New Kingdom. But this city was originally a capital also for the whole country during the Middle Kingdom. The city is very famous because it has a lot of monuments dating back to different periods, starting from the Middle Kingdom until the Greek Roman period. Even during the Islamic period, we have just a few monuments, but not that important like the ancient Egyptian monuments, which is very clear in this city. هذه المدينة هي مدينة شهيرة جدا، وهي مدينة الأقصر. المدينة دي مدى شهرتها أن هي كانت عاصمة مصر في خلال الدولة الحديثة، لكن مع الوقت أصبحت أفلى نجمها في أواخر الدولة الحديثة بعد تغير مكان العاصمة. لكن هي كانت شهيرة برضو لأن هي كانت عاصمة لمصر خلال الدولة الوسطى أيضا، ليس الدولة الحديثة فقط. المدينة شهرتها بسبب كمية الآثار اللي موجودة فيها، وهي بترجع لعصور مختلفة بدءا من عصر الدولة الوسطى وحتى العصر اليوناني الروماني. هي فيها بعض الآثار الإسلامية لكنها بسيطة جدا، وهي يعني لا تشير إلى مدى شهرة المدينة، لأن شهرة المدينة بسبب الآثار اللي بترجع لعصر الدولة الحديثة. The city is called Luxor, and actually the name given to the city by some of the travelers, the Arabian travelers who visited the city during the early Islamic period after the Amr ibn al-As conquest to Egypt at 651. They conquered the city. They conquered generally Egypt starting from 641, but this city conquered by Abdullah ibn Sarh at 651. And when the Arabs opened the gates of the city, they found a lot of buildings, huge buildings like this one in front of you, which is Karnak Temple. Nowadays we know it's Karnak Temple and Luxor temples. They know that these buildings, they are originally they were temples for the gods, but in that time during the early Islamic period, it was very hard for the Arabs to know that these buildings are not temples, but they call it the palaces, and they consider it the palaces of the kings of Egypt. So they called the city of the palaces, or Madinat al-Qusur. The name changed by the time from al-Qusur to Luxor, which we use it nowadays. In ancient time, originally during the New Kingdom, the city was called Was, and it's one of the scepters which hold by the right hand of the king near his left shoulder, and later on the Egyptians called it Thebes, especially during the Roman period, and that's meaning the word Thebes means the good land. For each city in ancient time, as you know, their ancient Egyptian created a kind of a triad. The triad, they are three gods and goddesses worshipped in this city. Actually, there were a lot of gods worshipped in this city, Luxor, through the history, but the most important triad is this triad in front of you. The main gods of this city was the one to the left hand side. the god Amun-Ra, who sat on his throne and had two feathers of ostrich above his head. This is the god Amun-Ra, the main god of Egypt and the god of the sun. Behind him, his wife Mut, the goddess Mut. She was the one of the goddesses of war in ancient time, and behind her, the god Khonsu, the sun. He was the god of moon in ancient Egypt, and so easy to recognize it because of the sun disk above the head. The most important monuments in the city, the first temple we were going to study is the Karnak temple, which is considered the biggest temple ever in Egypt, and it's recorded also in the Guinness record as one of the most famous temple and one of the most famous building, ancient building date back to ancient period. So we were going to study the temple of Luxor. It's just smaller than Karnak temple, but it's a very important temple still. And this temple also is dedicated to the god Amun-Ra. This is Luxor temple as it was. The artist built, drew this temple, and imagine this temple in ancient time, Luxor temple. And as you can see, generally in ancient Egypt, the temples were originally surrounded with enclosures wall protecting the temple, and also inside this enclosure wall there are a lot of buildings side beside the temple. Could be either the kind of schools, something looks like universe, some buildings looks like universities, which we call it the Beran, libraries, hospitals, some offices, governmental offices, and more offices belong to the temple itself, and also the houses of the priests who are working inside the temple itself. That's an imagination for Luxor temple that we're going to study. And as you know, that all these temples in ancient Egypt were originally 100% colored. In the West, all the temples we mentioned before, that those were in the east bank of the River Nile, and in the west bank of the River Nile, we have the cemetery where the ancient Egyptian cut the tombs of the kings, queens, very rich people, and even the common people. We will go on to study in the next semester some of these monuments. That's an imagination for Luxor temple that we're going to study. And as you know, that all these temples in ancient Hapo temple, which built by the king Ramses III, and it's a very unique temple. The Valley of the Kings, the place where the kings cut their tombs. The Valley of the Queens, and the Nobles Cemetery, there in Medina. So we will starting from the next lecture. From here, we will go and study a lot of monuments in this city. We will start with the Karnak Temple, which is the biggest one ever in Egypt, and I think you're going to interested very much. So starting from the next lecture, we are going to start with this temple in details. Thank you and see you next lecture.